Hello and welcome to Moves and Tea, and more importantly, welcome to almost the end of our Quentin Tarantino season. After this, we only have one more film to go, and here we are on the 8th film, I want to say.
Yes.
Which appropriately is titled, of course, The Hateful Eight, which sees Tarantino still in his Western period, or in this case, still a Southern period, in which a group of strangers find themselves thrown together to hide out a storm, only not everybody is who they say they are. Kim, I mean, obviously this is another big long one, and it's also a Western, so hardly two of our favourite things in the world. But how did you find The Hateful Eight?
This is a second watch for me, so I already kind of knew the pacing, and I already had my general feelings towards it.
Yeah.
I can't say that, the second viewing really changed my mind a lot, because I basically felt the same way. Except maybe, my basic feeling about it is that there's, the first, first chapter or so when they're heading to the cabin, and I think that part is kind of a drag. It's slow, and it's just, I don't know, I think that part's really hard to get through. Once you get into the cabin, it's a little bit better, because once you get into the whole, what's going on, and what's the plot here, and who's doing what, and what are all these, who are all these people, then it gets a little bit more interesting, because there's, a whole dynamic. Everybody's in this, it's almost like a whodunit, but not really. And it becomes a little bit more interesting to watch. But I think that's basically it. If you can get through the first, 45 minutes or so of the movie, then I think basically the rest of it is a lot easier to go through, because it's paced a little bit faster than that part.
Yeah. The film itself is set in 1877, so in the aftermath of the American Civil War is still fresh in everyone's memory, and racial tensions, of course, are still at very much a high, and it's here that we meet bounty hunter and Civil War veteran Major Marquis Warren, here played by Samuel L. Jackson. He's sent to the town of Red Rock, and in trying to outrun the storm, he hitches a ride with the stagecoach 11, which has been chartered by the bounty hunter John Ruth, played by Kurt Russell, who's also heading to Red Rock to hang the fugitive Daisy Domergue, who is part of the Domergue gang and is going to be very key to this story. And she's also one of the only female characters in this story of the eight. She's the only female member, here played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. And along the way, they meet up with Walter Goggins, sheriff, who's heading in also to Red Rock to be receive his star so he can become the sheriff of the town. And it's in this situation that they end up at a halfway point to hide out the storm and meet a whole bunch of other characters who also have the similar ID, including Hangman, played by Tim Roth. We've got the Mexican Senor Bob, played by Demian Bichir. We've got the Cowpuncher, played by Michael Madsen. And we have a general from the South, General Sanford Sandy Smithers, here played by Bruce Dern. And these characters make up our the company who's we're going to be spending a lot of time in, because it soon, as we explained already, it soon becomes clear that there are other people's motives that may not be what they are originally saying that they are. And over the course of this almost 3-hour epic, that people begin to become untrustworthy of other members of the group, and plots are hatched as everything builds to a very bloody and very Tarantino-esque climax. Straight off the bat, did you have a favourite character out of these 8, or did you sort of view them all pretty equal?
I think I view them all pretty equal. I think that the weight of them changes, and the appeal of their character changes also.
Yes, definitely.
I really, I think that John Ruth's character, Kurt Russell, is a pretty good character.
Oh, the walrus man.
Yeah. But then at the same time, if it was kind of more of a more of an unknown type of character, I think I always liked Tim Roth, so I thought his character was pretty good too.
Yeah, Tim Roth is it's so weird with that accent.
Yeah, but it's also his character is so I guess it's like it's not on like it's on screen a lot. So you don't really like he's there and he does I think like there was one chapter where he's a little bit more, you know, there in character. But I don't know. I think the second time watching it, the character that really got me was actually the sheriff's character. Because I don't know if it's because, like, literally I just finished it and the last scene is very heavy on this character. But I really thought the character had so much, because in the beginning you kind of thought he was kind of a bad guy in a way.
Yeah, you wasn't sure.
He's a bad guy turned good, right?
Yeah.
And you can't really decide whether he is or not. And I think even at the end, you're not really that sure. But at the same time, he's really, like, invested in this sheriff thing.
Well, Tarantino, for the inspiration, I mean, he was inspired a lot by the 1960s, like, Western TV shows like Bonanza and The Virginian. And the idea that often in these shows you would have an episode where a character is kidnapped by a bunch of bandits and how the situation sort of plays out. And he thought, well, how about if we just have a bunch of characters that we throw together in a situation, but we don't have one who's sort of like, you know, the clear-cut good guy in the situation. How about we just essentially have 8 bad people and see what happens if we throw them together? But in this case, they're all trapped together because of the storm that's outside. So tensions run high. You throw into the mix the fact that you still got the aftermath of the Civil War there, so obviously tensions between the North and South are still very much high. Racial tensions certainly are very much high, as people have some rather colourful language, should we say, in this film, which makes it really awkward if you just happen to have this on in the background and someone else is in the room. As obviously the word Negro and the N-word is thrown around aplenty, and I was surprised really it didn't get much more sort of criticism that obviously that we got when it came to Django. People actually, I think, whether they'd actually brushed up on the history or since the release of Django or what, or just were sort of more used to this sort of setting because of that film, it didn't really receive the same sort of criticism, which kind of surprised me because it is pretty heavy in places, and certainly the motivation for several of the characters' actions throughout this film, including Samuel Jackson using it to antagonize another character into a lawful murder, as he argues it. So,
I don't know. I mean, after 8 Tarantino movies, I'm kind of over it. You know, like, I'm so desensitized to the word. Like, to me, it seems like it's just, to him, it's nothing, right? I don't know whether it's meant to be, he's just using it as just conversation at this point. I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I still don't use the word a lot, but, no. I mean, I'm not as, like, ticked off by it as I was, say, before, I guess. That it would seem a little bit odd to be, you know, it seems, I don't know, because people use it in a very, I guess, people view it as a disrespectful word, right?
Yes. It's an awkward word to use. I mean, even now, I mean, here we are obviously as podcasting professionals, and we still obviously don't use the word. We obviously reference it, and I think a lot of people are very much the same. They don't like to be associated with that word. I mean, obviously, when it comes to the term of Negro, it is slightly less got sort of less hard edge to it, and certainly I think when it comes to the character like Daisy Donahue, it really sort of highlights just her sort of background. She's a lot more sort of common, and the fact that she thinks nothing of like saying like such disrespectful things, or like referring to the Major as being one of them coloreds. So it's, for her character, I think it adds a lot of sort of depth and gives us an insight into her sort of background. I would say the most shocking thing is just the random acts of violence against Daisy throughout the film. That are actually more shocking than any of the language in this one's, because it often comes out of nowhere that people will actually brutalize her, or she gets things thrown at her or thrown up on. It's just she goes through quite the ringer in this movie.
She does. I mean, Daisy gets all kinds of crap. It's like sudden, right? She keeps getting beat up, and by the end of the film, she's really just blood covered and teeth all gone. And,
Yeah.
you know, she's gone through a lot.
She definitely does, and I mean, it's still amusing me the scene where because the Major obviously has this letter from Lincoln that he corresponds with, and various characters wish to see it, and she like disrespects this letter by spitting on it, and Samuel Jackson just punching her straight out the cab, and Kurt Russell's character's been dragged out because he's chained to her. Just made me laugh, even though it was sort of like it. I felt like I shouldn't be laughing, but I thought it was still really amusing at the same time. It's interesting, obviously, in the way that she's written, because obviously she's treated as being the same as the guys. She doesn't get any sort of like treated any sort of differently because she's the only female in the group. She's not a damsel in distress. She's very much this fugitive, and by all means, as it's frequently mentioned, she's going to be set to hang. So
they basically say that, like, basically is they call it mean bastards, basically, right?
yeah, exactly.
So I mean, basically, it doesn't really matter who it is, as long as they've done something bad, then they need to be hanged, and that's the main concept here, is that they don't really separate her from the guys. The other men here are also pretty nasty people, you know? They're a nasty group. So, I don't know.
Oh, definitely so. I mean, they've all got their flaws, and they've certainly all got their assorted beliefs here. I mean, obviously, when we look at Samuel Jackson's character, I mean, he escapes from a southern camp and burns it to the ground, in the turn killing his own troops, as well as a number of young... I'm trying to remember how they described them. They were sort of like a youth brigade that was staying on the camp that was sort of killed by his actions. And then he also has that whole wonderful story time where he antagonizes Bruce Dern's character by claiming to have sexually assaulted his son, which I have to say is like one of the more shocking moments of the film. Hearing how he sexually assaulted this guy's son. I remember being in the cinema and just thinking, what the hell is this? It's just like you just felt it's really uncomfortable, and I think it's the fact it's Samuel Jackson talking about forcing another guy to perform oral sex on him that just seemed like so out of character. And it was so jarring. It felt very much like the scene at the end of Kingsman, the Secret Service, where he goes to rescue the princess chick, and she's sort of like, "Oh yeah, you can fuck me in the ass." It's like, did we really need an anal sex reference here? In the same way here, it's like, did we really need like a sex abuse reference in the middle of this story? So
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm really like unimpressed or anything, but I mean, it's just the fact that how to say it. It would be more like I think that in Tarantino movies, anything is possible.
Yeah.
After we watch so many movies, I really am not that shocked. Especially when it comes to Samuel L. Jackson's character. Okay. He always gives him these very over the top, outrageous, like ridiculous moments, and I think that this moment definitely counts as that moment for this character. Because I don't really think, like, his character, he is pretty, like, overall he's done a lot of bad stuff, I guess. But at the same time, I mean, he's just being a bounty hunter, I guess. So...
Because, he... Well, at the time, I mean, obviously he had a bounty on him, and he basically outlasted all that came looking for him to the point that they can no longer put a bounty on him, so he became a free man, and... In turn, he links this to a lot of racial resentment from a lot of these guys who are coming from the South with the idea of beheading a black guy.
Yeah.
And obviously one of them being this Major's son who he got the better of in more ways than one. But yeah, it was such a weird moment of the film, to say the least. So,
but I think it was just so ridiculous because you have this moment building up, and right before that, you have the Senior Bob playing Silent Night on the piano in the background, and you just have this conversation going on, and I think that the two mixed together was just so weirdly satisfying to listen to. I don't know how to put it, but it was this moment that I kind of liked until the story took a turn for something really weird. But yeah, I mean, Bob's character is an odd one too.
Senor Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Senor Bob was actually at one point when they were doing like the initial script reads for their film, because as part of when the script was in production, it actually got leaked onto the internet with a different ending, and Tarantino at that point was like, I'm not going to make it, I'm just going to release it as a novel. And then he started workshopping it and doing these live script reads, and the character Senor Bob in the original script was actually French, and he was being read by Denis Minochet, who's the farmer we see at the start of Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have been Senor Bob. I'm guessing he would have been Monsieur Bob. And I also like the fact that when it comes to obviously describing, the character Daisy, that he sees her really as like the Susan Atkins of the Wild West. Now, Susan Atkins obviously being one of the Manson girls, and you can see that when you look at her character. I mean, she's always seen as like this sort of tough outlaw chick. She never has these moments of softness at all, and I think the fact that she's constantly being brutalized and bloodied up, it sort of only makes sure that she's not given a chance to be sort of seen as this demure little flower or anything. So, but no, the character Senor Bob is such a weird one, isn't he?
He is, and I think that just because when we first start when he introduces himself, he's just Bob,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, man, this guy is sketchy as shit, like right away. You're like, there's something wrong with it. Anybody who calls themselves Bob in anything,
okay,
most likely is like probably not, like, especially like in films like this where it's like something deeper is going on. It almost feels like everybody has these like full names, and fancy titles. This is a general, and this one's a major, and this is a sheriff, and all that stuff. And he's just like, I'm Bob, and I'm looking after the inn, and
and I like the fact, as I said, the fact he's Senor Bob, and it's like one of the first clues that Samuel Jackson's character sort of picks up that everything's not right, because he's been to this post before, and he points out the fact that Minnie had a sign that said no dogs and no Mexicans, and that she took it down the sign because she let a dog in, but she obviously had this dislike of Mexicans, and it unfortunately doesn't translate when we actually see her character in a flashback, because she seems to get on with everybody. Even Bob, when he shows up, she has no disdain for him, even though he's obviously a Mexican. So that part didn't make much sense, but it's kind of fun when it gets into that sort of like Poirot style mystery. It's sort of like, well, who is not the person that they say they are, and it's weird because you've got that sort of like Poirot mystery where the sort of like you got him, the major, and you got the sheriff who was sort of like piecing everything together and trying to identify who's the guy who poisoned the coffee and who who's responsible for all these murders and things. So I like the mystery element to it, and I also like the fact that it's got this undertones of the Thing to it. The fact that we got these howling winters outside, which I get. I don't know if it's for yourself, Kim. It has the same sort of effect. I mean, obviously coming from the land of ice and snow that you do, but
I don't live in ice and snow. It's not like I live in the Arctic,
but you see more snow than I see snow. So it's, for myself, it's got a magical edge to it when we have like howling blizzards and stuff. We don't have to like dig our driveways out over here.
Well, I mean, I think it's different. I think that snowscapes in general are is a pretty good setting in general for a lot of different genres of movies. And I still think that they're pretty good because there's this isolation, right? You have this sense of isolation, especially when you're caught in some snowstorm and some blizzard or something. I think it's different because I do know how bad the snow is, that it might actually be a little bit easier to be caught up in the situation of a film.
It was also weird as well. I don't know if you thought the same, but it seemed kind of cozy. The whole inn situation. I mean, they have one bed, so I don't know whether everyone plans to sort of sleep and stuff. But it didn't seem like the worst place in the world to be sort of like stuck in a blizzard for 2 days. So, because normally when you look at these places, they're pretty awful. Like when we look at the research base in The Thing, it's very sort of like basic and looks uncomfortable as all hell. But this actually looked like it'd be a pretty decent place to sort of be holed up for 2 days. Although obviously
it's just because no one needed to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
you didn't see anybody like trekking their way to the outhouse other than OB or something.
That's true. And I was kind of disappointed as well the fact we get no shots of blood on snow, which is what I always want to see when we have like any snow place. I love seeing blood on snow. It's like one of those tropes that just never gets old for me. So. Also, with directors, obviously, when we talk about directors' trademarks here, Tarantino here has a cameo this time as the narrator, which felt more like he was reading like the script notes than actually providing narration. It's sort of like, oh, the group hid guns, or they decided to draw straws. OB got the short straw. I have to say, OB has a real shitty time of things here.
I think that Tarantino doing this is not too bad. It really kind of pulls the script together. Like, you kind of have a good idea of, say, time frame in a sense, where one party was like, 15 minutes later, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Thing. Or, what's going on with the people around. Just kind of clearing up the situation a little, I think. And that helps, I guess. I don't think it's completely necessary, but I think it's a decent addition, I guess.
We also get the return of Zoe Bell, which is always welcome to see, who's been a Tarantino cast regular since providing stunt work for Kill Bill, and then obviously she turns up as herself in Death Proof and Django Unchained, and now here she is, the only New Zealand chick in the Wild West. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there is many Australians who came over to the West, but it was kind of nice to see her.
It is. I mean, I do think Zoe Bell has her like little cameo characters in these Tarantino films, and I think she's I sometimes feel like she deserves to have a bigger role.
Yeah. I mean, she has obviously had more bigger roles. I mean, she was obviously in Whip It, and she was in Raise. So she has that off the back of her like appearances in Tarantino movies. She's obviously gone on to have more of a career as an actor, and she has very good acting abilities. So you're right. It would be nice to see her in more. Who knows? Maybe down the line, maybe Tarantino writes something for her. When we get I'm trying to think which chapter it is now, because the film's obviously broken up into 6 chapters, I want to say, which is it's a nice touch as well, the fact that when you have the DVD, it's not by scene, it's all by chapter, so it makes it really easy if you wanted to like just break this up a bit, because it is a bit of a long movie. So when we obviously got the opening credits and it's listing all the cast and stuff, I remember that first time I was watching it and like thinking, God, well, where are all these people? I mean, we've clearly got our 8 people here. It's like, where the hell do these people come into it? And then we obviously had the surprise flashback that obviously introduces all our missing cast members. When it comes to the twist, I mean, did it sort of pay off for yourself, or? I think
it did. I think that, I mean, if there's anything that, I can't fault Tarantino for is his writing abilities. Like script and stuff is really good on his point. And I think that for this one, it's really good because, I mean, other than the first act, which I really did not like going through.
Yeah.
Like the first hour of the film or so that I really, really hate going through. the whole part where we have these people and then finally seeing, you know, the whole plan or like the whole twist in chapter 5 or something as a flashback, I think it all pieces the things together, like the little details that say, oh, one person finds or sees, and the information that kind of gets bounced around about this location itself. And, you know, Minnie and Sweet Dave and all these little things that they're talking about, it all gets kind of pieced together in that flashback scene to the beginning of the movie, basically.
Yeah, of course.
And to me, I think that is a really good touch, because in just like that few moments, it kind of puts everything into perspective to build you up for the big finale. Like, where do they go from there now?
Of course, and I like as well the fact that when it came to his casting, it's sort of like everyone's very much on the level. There's no sort of like one big star to sort of like really stand out or make themselves easily to identify as being like the hero sort of figure in this one. Everyone's pretty much on the same sort of level in terms of star power. I mean, obviously you got new additions, people like Walter Goggins, who at this point was still coming off Justified, so he hadn't really become like a household name. And then you obviously got like revivalist names like Jennifer Jason Leigh, and you've got Bruce Dern, who plays the Major, and who prior to watching this I caught in The Driver, so it was kind of fun to see him back in his prime in like 76, and then obviously see him here in this, and he's not lost it. Although he's not one of those actors I could ever sort of place. If you said, oh, Bruce Dern's in this, is like, yeah, I can't place that. But obviously I can understand why Tarantino includes him, because he loves to include his favourite actors from back in the day, so.
I'm not gonna lie, I really, other than the basic people like Samuel L. Jackson or Tim Roth or something, I honestly can't really pinpoint a lot of the people here.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, because it's not really, like, I went through, you know, I remembered when I finished watching this, I was really impressed with Jennifer Jason Leigh, and I was like, I know I've seen her somewhere, but where, you know? Yeah. And it's like blank, blank, blank type of thing. And then same goes for Bruce Dern, which I think after that I started really noticing him when he showed up in other films. But I mean, the other people, like, I think I didn't really pay much attention to it until we did our season now. So now, like, you know, Michael Madsen kind of pops up whenever I see him now. Like, it's kind of like, oh, well, oh, that's the guy. He's been in almost all of the films type of thing, in one way or another.
Funny as well with Michael Madsen, who is repulsed by violence in real life, and the fact he constantly turns up in these like ultra violent roles. Like when they were doing the bride burying sequence in Kill Bill Volume 2, he noted that he felt physically sick. So it's just amusing the fact he's like, you keep signing on for these projects knowing that they're going to be like stupidly violent. It's like, but then again, I suppose what can he actually play? I mean, do you see Michael Madsen in like a romantic comedy or a family picture or something? He's sort of like got limited roles he can play. He has to sort of capitalize on what he is, because he's a big guy. So
yeah, I understand. But I'm just saying, you know, like.
But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this more than Django, even though like the Western period of Tarantino's filmography isn't my favorite by far. I mean, this originally was set to be a sequel to Django. It's going to be called Django in White Hell, but Tarantino couldn't really make the character work in this sort of setting, so he decided just to push ahead and have a new bunch of characters instead. So I assume that we can assume that the Major will be like the Django character in this, because obviously when we look at Django Unchained, I mean, he's got bounty hunters after him as well, so there's elements of the character you can see sort of carried through, and then he sort of like built this character up to be more so original. The fact he has like the Lincoln Letter, and he's obviously got his own ideas when it comes to like justice and being a bounty hunter. I mean, as he says that, I don't bring any of my bounties in alive. I just kill them all dead because it's a lot more hassle to bring them in alive. Whereas when we look at Kurt Russell's character, he's sort of like he likes to see all his bounties hung. So,
well, I mean, we realize why at the end.
Because I must clearly missed something there then.
Yeah, because they say he's the hangman.
Of course. There we go.
So that's why. But, yeah, I mean, if you compared it to Django and I don't know. I mean, I guess I like Hateful Eight a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just because the second act is so crazy.
What, the fact you get to see Channing Tatum shot in the head?
No, I don't really care too much for Channing Tatum.
Again, he gets shot in the head, so it solves that problem then, doesn't it? So.
Well, no, I don't really care either way. I mean, I thought his character was pretty little overall.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was interesting. I remember when I first saw him in the film, like the first time I saw this in theaters, and I saw him, and I was like, oh my god, that's Channing Tatum. How did he land himself a role in Tarantino's film? And then I think that was what I said, and I didn't mean it in like a mean way or anything. I just meant it in the sense that I didn't realize, like, I didn't really see him being casted into a Tarantino film.
Like,
but
what you doing here, you freeloader? You got to earn your right to be.
Yeah, but I mean, but then I mean, when you think about it, in 2015 when Hateful Eight was out, he's already kind of shifted his character a little. I mean, obviously he shifted it from the beginning phase because now his biggest movie was Magic Mike or something. So, so I guess that's why I didn't really picture him being in this film.
Yes, the former exotic dancer made a movie about being a male exotic dancer. Yeah, it was a real push for him. So, they're saying that. I mean, we obviously give Channing Tatum a lot of shit, but he has branched out and put in some like really interesting surprise appearances. Like, he turns up randomly in This Is the End.
No. I mean, I'm not shitting on Channing Tatum. I really think that from, his early days of his early movies where he was pegged as just one type of actor, like that kind of, he was really like, really not very diverse in his roles. I think that it's really nice to see that he's breaking out of this. And I think that probably started with, 21 Jump Street or something like that. Yeah. And I think that's when you finally kind of broke out of that thing and turned into kind of changed his path a little. So, I mean, I think it's nice. I think it was a nice surprise to see him in Hateful Eight. Like, I don't really care if his character got shot in the head because I think that his character was so small. It was kind of hanging over the whole time, I guess, that there was this character, but it didn't really come into play until pretty late in the movie, right?
I haven't got anything else really to say about this one. Other than Kurt Russell destroying the guitar, that was actually an antique guitar. So Jennifer Jason Leigh's reaction was actually for real. The plan was to switch it out for a fake prop one for Kurt Russell to smash, but he actually smashed the proper antique one from the 18th century. The museum no longer lends out their collection to filming anymore as a result of this film. So, yeah, her reaction is very much real. As Kurt Russell had noted, he looked over at Tarantino and he had the sort of like curled lips smile to him as he'd clearly got something that he needed from this moment. So, but yeah, all it cost was just destroying a valuable antique. So, but yeah, there's a lot of real random musical moments in this film. So. Yeah,
well, I mean, soundtrack is always such a big part of Tarantino's movies, right?
And this one obviously has Enrico Morricone, who obviously did a lot of the spaghetti westerns. He did Good, the Bad and the Ugly, all those sort of iconic spaghetti western scores. So for Tarantino to obviously get him on to do the soundtrack of this film was sort of like a real get for him. And I mean, it's a bit of fanboy wish fulfillment there to obviously make a western and have it soundtracked by Morricone. It's all like, that's the real sort of you've made a proper Western in that respect, so. But I have to say, it doesn't limit itself to sort of like genre-style pieces. There's elements of like modern music in this, and the film itself doesn't feel like it's trying to be like a period piece. It's just more sort of like a revivalist sort of Western feel to it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't... this is not my forte, so I don't know. I really don't know. I've watched like 3.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I prefer Eastern Westerns to just traditional Westerns, so I do like it when they do something new. I mean, this, or if you like look at things like Bone Tomahawk, so give me a Western, but just do something more interesting than just usual cowboy shit. That's all I ask. Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to listen to us, and maybe leave us a review, as it all helps raise the profile of the show. We are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, so come and say hi to us there. And you can also check out our full archive of episodes at moviesandtpodcast.wordpress.com, where we also have our Friday Film Club, where each Friday myself and Kim both pick a film to highlight. Sometimes it's a theme, sometimes it's not. Either way, it's a chance for us to explore more of the movies that we love. But Kim, it's our final episode. Next episode.
Yes. And we're going to be looking at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 2019 movie. Also, almost 3 hours long. Yay! So excited.
Is it a first time watch, or you've seen this one before?
Yes, it's a first time watch. But at least there's Margot Robbie in it. I'm looking at the list of characters, and I'm excited about that.
Yep, it's another alternate history lesson from Quentin Tarantino, as he brings together both Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, and as you said already, Margot Robbie, for a unique history lesson to say the least. But that's coming up in our next episode, so hope you can join us for that. But until then, thank you for listening. Thanks to my co-host Kim, and we will be back next time to look at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But until then, good night.